Spin fully around like this? Like, what should I do? Like this? I know, now I'm like, front and center. I think they did a poor job. Did you see me waving at She's in back. I'm too fast. You were like the most far centered out of this. I think I'm front and center. Front and center. I don't know what she's talking to, the one that's in front of her.
Hey, paramedics. Great to meet you. I know, I noticed it. This is a huge stair. Actually,
I almost want
yeah.
I know I almost wear sweatshirts and leggings, and then Ian shows up in jeans and a sweater. I know, I was like, no, I'm strange. Yeah. Can you imagine if we had wearing sweatshirts? This is embarrassing for us. Oh, Deirdre! What's she up to? Oh, I got that. I got the Another one with me with my pizza too. Another one with me and my pizza. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone. We're delighted to see you. I have the shortest role on stage. My name is Mike Ralphus, and I'm the director of Renew Chicago. On behalf of Renew Chicago, the Chicago Sunday Evening Club, and Park Community Church, we are delighted to have you here with us tonight, and we're delighted to welcome the full orchestra and chorale of the Moody Bible Institute. So welcome, guys. I'm going to hand it off to Lauren Faust, who is going to MC us for this evening. And I hope you all have a beautiful time and a chance to worship and know our great God.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mike. Well, welcome everybody. It is so wonderful to have all of you here with us. Again, as Mike said, this event was put on tonight by Renew Chicago. So thank you to them. Quick little clap. And if you guys are new to Renew Chicago, it is an organization that really exists to inspire, educate, and mobilize our community. And it really works for the goodness and greatness of Chicago. Now, a few of the ways that Renew does this is through learning. Specifically, they aim to learn about the 77 neighborhoods in Chicago, what issues they're having, and how we can really just be supporting them. They also work through prayer and spend a lot of time in prayer that peace would touch every single corner of this city. We also work by engaging and really just getting off the sidelines, inviting people in, not sitting still, and being out there, being the hands and feet in our community so that we can work to serve the greater good. And then lastly, we do it through investing, using our financial resources and our time to just make this city known and to make God known through this city. Now, tonight's event is called Second Quarter, so it's for those who are in the second quarter of their lives. Now, again, however you choose to define, that is completely up to you. I won't be the judge of that. But we're super excited for this evening, and we have an incredibly amazing speaker with us tonight who actually comes from Cambridge, England. We'll be hearing from Tyndale House theologian, Dr. Peter Williams in a little bit. But first, as you can see, there are many individuals behind me. So we are joined by the Moody Bible Institute chorale, and I am so excited for them. You guys are in for a special treat. So hope you enjoy this evening. Before we kick things off, I would love if you would all just bow your heads and pray with me as we get started tonight. Father, we thank you for this time that we have to come together. We thank you that you allowed this event to happen, Lord. I just continue to ask that you would just be with this city, Lord. Thank you so much for Renew Chicago and for all of the work that has done throughout the city. I just ask that you continue to allow us to be the hands and the feet, to be able to spread the gospel through this city, to be able to pray for peace in the city, to just really be able to serve in every single neighborhood. We're just so thankful that we all come from such diverse backgrounds, that we live in so many neighborhoods throughout this wonderful city, and that we have the opportunity to make the gospel known throughout. I ask that you bless this evening, Lord. It would not be possible without you. I ask that you just be with each individual here. You know what every single person in this room came in with, Lord. And I ask that Peter's message would just resonate with those in this room. We ask all of this in your most holy name we pray. Amen.
kids. Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you. It's wonderful to be with you here tonight.
And thank you. It's wonderful to be with you here tonight. My name is Dan Maddox, and my colleague is Youngmin Kim, and we are professors in the Music and Media Arts Division. On behalf of our department chair, Kelly Worrell, and our president, Mark Jobe, we bring you greetings from just down the street at Moody Bible Institute. So we're very happy to be here with you tonight, representing our school. And the Moody Campus Orchestra here and the Moody Chorale over there to my left. We're delighted to be here with you. We wonder if you will please stand with us and sing along with a new song just came out in January called This Is Our God. We'd like you to join with us in singing now this song, This Is Our God.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Sending all the promises of Christ my King, through eternal ages let His praises ring. Glory in the highest, I will shout and sing, standing on the promises of God. Standing, standing Standing on the promises that cannot fail. Let the heavens storms and clouds and clear our sail. By the living word of God I shall prevail. Standing on the promises of God. Standing, standing, standing on the promises of God, my Savior. Standing, standing, I'm standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises that cannot fall. Every moment to the Spirit's call. Trusting in my Savior as my all in all. I'm standing on the promise, standing on the promise. I'm standing on the promises of God. Standing, standing, standing on the promises of God, my Savior. Standing, standing, I'm standing on the promises of God. I'm standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises of God. The promises of God.
Thank you so much. We love playing that piece. Any of you recognize that one? It is well with my soul. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul. So I hope as you've worshiped with us this evening, you've traveled with us through a lot of different musical times and genres, and it's a good reflection of all the different styles we try to teach and enjoy worshiping through at Moody. We've had a special request from the Renew Chicago team with this last song that we'll do together before we turn it over to our guest speaker, and that is a new one to Park and a new one to many of us up here in the front. Oh God Beyond All Praising, and it may be a familiar tune to some, but wonderful, beautiful lyrics and an amazing English tune that I think you'll pick up on right away. It may sound familiar to some. So could we stand together, please, and sing this wonderful English tune, Oh God Beyond All Praising.
Hey, wonderful Moody chorale and band. What an orchestra. It's great to have you guys here. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Joe Riccardi. I get to serve at a church that meets in Lincoln Park, and it's just super excited to introduce Peter Williams. I think it was probably 6 months or so ago. I can't remember when Matt and Ashley, good friends of mine, said, Joe, I'd really love to see Park, get to know this guy, maybe partner with him. And so I looked him up online, and they said, hey, can you set up a Zoom call or something? And just again, went online, checked out all his degrees, and I thought, this is going to be the most fun Zoom call, but I'll do it. I'll do it. And got on Zoom with Peter, because I saw, man, he's got like 25 different degrees. And so again, I'm thinking maybe not super fun, but let's do this. And got online, got on a Zoom call with him, and within about 30 seconds, I realized I like this guy. This guy's fun. Not only is this guy brilliant, but he's also real fun to get to know. And so we've got to know each other a little bit, and got to hang out earlier tonight. So Peter's from Yorkshire in London, and been married for 26 years to Catherine. They have 2 children. Their daughter's studying in France right now, linguistics, and their son is still at home at State School there at 17 years old. Peter's the principal at the Tyndale House, which is a Cambridge-based religious research institution that has one of the world's greatest biblical scholarships, where they just study all kinds of things. So I was just super excited to have Peter come and address this topic. Can we trust the Gospels? I think we're going to be really blessed. So let's give Peter Williams a welcome tonight.
Great, well, it's really good to be with you, and the sound is clearly working, and my job is to keep you awake. I mean, obviously, I can't compete with that wonderful orchestra and choir. That was just exquisite. Thank you so much for ministering to us. Yeah, round of applause. Can we trust the Gospels? The quick answer is yes, but we're going to take a little bit more time to get to the subject. The Gospels, if you put all 4 Gospels together and you read them out loud, it takes about 9 hours. Okay, so reading the Bible out loud, audio Bible, 70, 75 hours. Harry Potter, read by Stephen Fry, 135 hours. So Gospels really not very long, but they are remarkable things. And what's amazing, there are so many things about the Gospels that are amazing, but one amazing thing is that there are 4 Gospels, because they were written about a man, Jesus, who wasn't part of the elite at the time, and who grew up in a place called Nazareth, which was like a bit of a backwater. I wouldn't like to name a town near here that was like that, but maybe you can think of some, because, who becomes famous coming from there? And he has 4 biographies of him, which is as many as there are of the Roman emperor at the time. Who was the most famous guy in the Roman Empire? Well, the Roman emperor, Tiberius. And he has the same number of biographies. And Jesus has that number. That's just astounding. Because people back then never wrote biographies of people who weren't part of the elite, or people who'd been dead for a really long time. So how did Jesus even get 1 gospel, let alone 4, where we've just got an abundance of stuff about him? And actually, the Gospels are longer overall than the biographies we have of the Roman Emperor. So we can actually be more knowledgeable about lots of things that Jesus did than you can about the most famous person at the time. In fact, you can actually analyze Jesus' speech from more different angles. Because in the Gospels, we've got long speeches by him to crowds. We've got speeches that he gives to his disciples, like around the table, around a meal. We got back and forth with his disciples in private. We got back and forth with people in public. All sorts of different ways of him speaking. You don't get that of other people. When you look at the last week of Jesus' ministry, the time leading up to the crucifixion, that is the most detailed description of a week when you put what we got together in the Gospels that we have of any week in anyone's life from that sort of time back then. It's just astounding what we have. Compare that with, say, Alexander the Great. You've heard of Alexander the Great, the guy who conquered the world, right? By the time he was 33, and Jesus died and was raised again at 33. It's just amazing. Alexander the Great, the first biography to be written about him comes from 250 years after he was alive. 250 years, that's the first one. The next one is 350 years. So when you read all those history books and they tell you this is what Alex did, and he did this, and he did that, and did that, how do we know all that stuff? Because of things written a lot later. Now, if you go on the streets, people are going to say, how can I trust the Gospels? They could have been written, tens of years later. They weren't written hundreds of years later. So, if we're prepared to trust the stuff about Alexander the Great, there's no reason to doubt the things that we have in the Gospels. Now, we've got 4 Gospels, and they are by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let's just think a little bit about those names that we have. Matthew is one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. John is one of the 12 disciples of Jesus, but Mark and Luke aren't, okay? But it's interesting, the longest speeches we have in the Gospels come up in Matthew and John, who were the 2 guys who are actually there. Mark, he gets his information from Peter, so he's his interpreter, and so he spent a lot of time with him and actually came from Jerusalem, so he'd seen a lot going on. And Luke was a doctor who didn't come from Jerusalem, but he'd actually not flown in, but he'd come in and he'd done a lot of research, and we'll look at it. Now, Matthew, what's his job supposed to be? His job's supposed to be a tax collector. Tax collectors are interested in money. Now, are there any signs that this really is by Matthew? Yeah, there are. Look at Matthew's Gospel, and you will find more mentions of things related to money than any of the other Gospels. So already by chapter 2, you're dealing with a wise man, and he mentions the treasure, the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. And then you're going to find that he's got the parable of the talents, and the other Gospels don't have. He's got the time when the temple tax collectors come in together. He's got the amount of money that Judas got offered to betray Jesus. He's got the bribe to the soldiers and what they did with it. All sorts of things like that. He's mentioning money time and time again. He's got more numbers than the other Gospels have got in them. That's his numbers guy. It really makes sense that he wrote that Gospel. It's written by someone that close to the time. What about Mark? Can we see reasons to say Mark wrote his Gospel? Well, the thing is this. If it weren't for the Gospel, we'd never have heard of Mark at all. So there's no reason to stick Mark's name on the Gospel, because that's not going to add to its credibility. Well, when you look at it, does it stack up that it was who it says it was? Well, do you know that Mark is a Latin name, like Mark Antony? Marcus, that's what it is. He's a gospel writer with a Latin name. Isn't it interesting? He's got more Latin words in the Greek of Mark's Gospel than you have in the other ones. So we're talking about legions, talking about centurions. There are different words for centurion. There's a Greek word for centurion, there's a Latin word. He uses the Latin, the Roman word. The languages really stack up, but it's not that just he knows that language. Also, he's recording the detailed language that Jesus spoke. That Jesus says to a girl, get up, Talitha cum. Or that he says to a blind man, a man who's deaf and can't speak, Ephphatha, be opened. That's the local language. Now, I don't know, you've got like local expressions around here, Chicago, that you don't have in other places, maybe not. I wouldn't know those, because I don't come around from around here. And that means I'd be really bad if I were trying to write a story about what happened in Chicago. I would have to do loads and loads of research before I could get it right. And that would be with the internet or traveling here. Back then, you couldn't do that. You couldn't travel around easily, and travel was dangerous, it was expensive. And so how do you get the details of local language right? But Mark's got that right. And then you look at Luke, and Luke's amazing because it's by a doctor, and you can see there's more medical language in the whole description. When he talks about diseases, he's more medically precise than the other ones. And John's Gospel, John really fits as someone written by a Galilean fisherman. It gets the Sea of Galilee right. Now, when we look at the Sea of Galilee, we might be visiting it, like if you pay for a ticket, go to Israel. But a lot of the time, we look at it from Google Earth, don't we? And if you look at the planet, that's the way we tend to look at it, okay? But back then, they didn't have satellites, okay? It's really interesting that when you look at the way the gospel writers describe the Sea of Galilee, they describe it from exactly the perspective you would expect them to. Let me explain. Luke came from further up north, and he came from near the Mediterranean Sea, which is a ton bigger than the Sea of Galilee. Okay? The Sea of Galilee is only like 4 to 5 miles across. How does he describe the Sea of Galilee? He calls it the Lake of Galilee. Right? The lake. It's just like a little pond, it's a lake. How does fisherman John describe the Sea of Galilee? How does Mark, using Peter, the fisherman's information, describe the Sea of Galilee? It's the sea. And when they say they went over to the other side, we look from Google Earth and we think, well, that's not the other side. But if you actually get down on the shoreline, it is the other side. So the perspective they have, we're actually seeing things the way they see them. That's an amazing thing. It's a sign of their reliable reporting. So one thing you can see in the Gospels is that they know about the places they're writing about. I want to give you a few passages to just solidify this. So we're going to look up a bit from Luke chapter 10. Along comes Luke chapter 10 verse 25. It says, along comes a lawyer and tests Jesus, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "In the law, what's written? How do you read it?" But he replied, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus replied, "You've answered well. Do this and you will live." But he, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" And Jesus answered and said, "A man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, fell amongst robbers, who stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him dead. And by chance along came a priest on that road, and seeing him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite came to that place, and seeing him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was journeying came to him, and seeing him, had compassion on him. And he came and he bound up his wounds, and he poured on oil and wine, and he put him on his own donkey and led him to the inn, and there he took care of him. And on the next day, as he was leaving, he took out 2 denarii, gave it to the innkeeper, and said, "Look after him, and whatever you spend in addition, when I come back, I will repay you." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor of the one who fell amongst the thieves? And Jesus said, and the man said, "I suppose the one who did the mercy to him." And Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." Okay, that's a rough translation. I just translated from the Greek. And, it's just like, if it was rough, not quite what your English had, that's fine. It's stunning what you have in that story, because there are so many details that you could only write if this is true. This really happened. One of them is this. The guy asks a question, to which Jesus asks a counter question. Okay? That's in Luke, and it's only in Luke. Then the guy makes a statement, and then he asks another question. Who is my neighbor? To which Jesus tells the story and then asks the counter question. Which one of these three do you think was a neighbor? Now, one of the things we've got there is a hallmark of the way Jesus speaks. Someone asks him a question, he asks the question back. That's over in Luke's Gospel. In Matthew's Gospel, we've got exactly the same fingerprint of Jesus' speech. People ask him questions 10 times in Matthew's Gospel, he asks a question back, but it's not having the same conversation. You've got the same style of speech there. Now, that's just one thing, but there's a little bit more. Because what we can say is it knows the sort of mindset that people have in the land, because it's dealing with a lawyer, and a lawyer is not like our lawyers. This lawyer is an expert in the Jewish law. And Jesus, when he replies to him, answers with incredible skill, because he asked him, what's it say in the law? And the man replies about the greatest command, loving God with everything and loving your neighbor. And Jesus says to him, "Do this and you will live." Now that requires really, really deep knowledge of the Old Testament, because there's only one time that anyone in the Old Testament ever says the phrase, "Do this and you will live," the exact phrase. Do you know who it is? It is Joseph,
who says that to his brothers when they come to Egypt and they don't know that it's Joseph. And he says that to them, and what had his brothers done to him last time? They had left him naked to die, just like the man in the story that Jesus is about to tell. And so what you see is this little detail shows you we are dealing with someone who is really expert in the Bible. And that makes sense if Jesus is the one who actually said those words. Now the guy wants to justify himself, and so Jesus tells a story. And the story goes, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. What that phrase already shows you is it's not just that that the story writer knows about the land of Jesus, he knows the shape of the land of Jesus. Because Jerusalem is 750 meters above sea level, and Jericho is the lowest city on earth, it's 250 meters below, and there's a road straight down, and it's one actually where there were lots of thieves. So, if someone were from another country, how are they going to know to tell a story like that? You getting what I'm saying? There's a detail in this that really makes sense only if people are up close and they're able to record that. Then it says in Jesus' story that along came a priest. And the priest is coming down the road from Jerusalem. That's, of course, where priests were very active. But also we know from archaeology there are lots of priests who live in Jericho. So he's actually coming back from work, and that's what he's doing. That sort of detail exactly fits. And so you go through the story, and you see time and time again that the gospel writers really know what they're talking about. It makes sense if Jesus really told this story exactly at the time as it says he did. So that's just one detail the gospel writers get right. But there's another detail that they get right, and that is what they call people. Remember, Jesus has 12 disciples, and 2 of them are called Simon. One of them is called Simon Peter, and the other one's called Simon the Zealot, sometimes called Simon the Canaanite or the Canaanian, right? Why have he got 2 disciples with the name Simon? Because Simon was a really common name. Do you know how many Simons there are in the Gospels? There are lots of them. There's Simon of Cyrene, who carries the cross. There's Simon the leper, who doesn't seem to be a leper. People are having a meal with him, so maybe Jesus healed him. Then in the book of Acts, you have Simon the leatherworker, or the tanner that Simon Peter stays with. You've got loads of Simons. And what's interesting about this is the gospel writers say or present Simon as being the most common name. Now, we can now look archaeologically and get details of what the most common names were at the time. And we find for Jews in the land at the time, Simon was the most common name for a man. What's the most common name for women in the Gospels? It's the name Mary. And we can look archaeologically, and it's the most common name for women. But there's an extra thing in the Gospels. You see, Simon is called, one Simon's called Simon Peter, another called Simon the Zealot, one's called Simon of Cyrene, and Mary's called Mary Magdalene, or Mary the mother of James and Joseph. You don't just call someone Mary, because there are loads of Marys around and you would know which Mary you're talking about. And there are loads of Simons around, and so if you just say Simon, you don't know which one you're talking about. So you see that the Gospels add these extra bits with each of them, a bit like our surnames. But they only do that with the names that were the most common in the land. They don't do it with rarer names, like Thomas. They don't need to say Thomas something extra. And they don't have to do that with Philip, which is not such a common name. So what you find is they've got exactly the right pattern of names for the land they're writing about. Now, do you ever forget names? Do you ever forget anyone's name? Sure, we forget names all the time, because names are pretty random. So how are you going to get that name to stick on that person? It's hard to do it. But often when you forget someone's name, you can still remember loads of things about them. You can remember the last conversation you had with them. You can remember things about their family or what they do. Because stories are easy to remember and names are hard to remember. That's why when we watch a film, we can usually remember the plot of the film. We forget the names of the characters. They don't seem very important to us. But the interesting thing here, the Gospels are getting the detail of the names right, which is the hardest thing to get right. And that's showing us that we're not getting the gospel stories several steps removed. Because if they had been retold and retold lots of times, you wouldn't get that sort of detail right. Now, it's not just that they get the names of places right, and the shape of the land right, and the names of people right. They get loads of things right. So again, if I were to write a story about Chicago, I would do a really bad job, because you've not only got to remember, you've got to describe the weather right here. Okay, maybe you'll have an idea about sometimes it's a bit cold here at Windsor and things like that. But actually, you've got to get the relative proportions of jobs. Like, how many people do this sort of job in Chicago? How many people do that sort of job? When you look at the Gospels, they get the relative proportion of this job to that job right for the country, for the time. You have to get all the bits of social stratification, all of the culture, all of the legal terminology, all of the religious ways of talking right. You've got to get it all right. And the Gospel writers, time and time again, you can test them. You can test them their knowledge of the plants of the land. When it says Zacchaeus, the little man, was up a sycamore tree in the town of Jericho, that makes exactly the right sense, because there are sycamore trees that grow in Jericho. When it says that Jesus went to a garden on the Mount of Olives that was called Gethsemane, that is just a stunning piece of information. Because if I lived anywhere other than really close by, I would have no clue what the name of the garden was. And that garden, named Gethsemane, exactly works in the local language because it means press of oil. Now, why do you have an oil press? Because you're pressing olive oil on the Mount of Olives, right? All those sort of things that you just could read through in the Gospels and think, oh, you know, it's just a boring detail. They are written in a really democratic way, if I can put it like this. They are written to equip ordinary people with evidence that they're true. They're just throughout. It doesn't advantage people who are super brainy. It just, everyone is able to see that there are just signs of trustworthiness throughout the text. In fact, there's a little bit more. Think about the story of Zacchaeus. What's his job? His job is a chief tax collector. Where is he living? He's living in Jericho. Where is Jericho? Jericho is a town just next to a border, which is the River Jordan. That's where you need to have tax collectors, because you tax people when they come across the border. It's a border from one bit of the Roman Empire to another bit. You have to go past that town, and he's a chief tax collector, so you have loads of tax collectors there, right? And that's in Luke, and only in Luke's Gospel. But in Mark and Matthew, and only in Mark and Matthew, you have Jesus sitting down with a whole load of tax collectors having a meal. Where are they? They're not in Jericho. They're actually up north in Capernaum, which is just around the top of the Sea of Galilee. Again, what do we know about Capernaum? It's a border town. It's a town between the east and the west. You come across and you're going to get hit by a tax. In other words, they get this stuff right again and again. The gospel writers know what they're talking about, and that's because they're reliable. We ask, how do we know the gospels have been correctly handed down to us? I've got a Greek New Testament here, and I've got a list of manuscripts at the back. And so we can look up all this sort of stuff. And you know, there are manuscripts around the place. I was in Louisville a couple of days ago, and there they had a 12th century manuscript of the Gospels. I was in Indianapolis this morning, and there they had 13th century manuscripts of the Gospels. In Chicago, you've got early manuscripts of the Gospels. You've got the Michigan Gospel, really early stuff. Over where I live in Cambridge, England, I live, 500 yards from a 5th century manuscript of the Gospel. Sorry, it's just like where I live. I can't help it. And, I could go down to London, so an hour down on the train, and I can see the earliest complete manuscript of the New Testament. And it's not just that these things are public and they're on display and you can see them. You actually can get them on your phones. So you want that earliest manuscript of the complete New Testament, you can have it in 10 seconds on your phone right now. Just go Codex, C-O-D-E-X, Sinaiticus, SINAITICUS.org. Just put it in, and it'll pop up on your phone. You've got a good internet signal. You can look at every single page of that manuscript. You can click on the Greek, and it doesn't matter if you don't know Greek, you can click on it, hover over it, and it will give you an English translation. Whole thing. Just the transparency of it. There isn't a major New Testament manuscript that you can't have within 10 seconds on your phone. You just need to know where to point your phone to. I can tell you, give you the information, it's all out there. In fact, there are loads of scholars who are working on the relationship between all the manuscripts. You can go there, you can go to NTVMR. Just look up NTVMR, on your phone, it'll come up, the New Testament virtual manuscript book. You can start seeing pictures of these things, you can start seeing genetic diagrams, everything. The information's all there. CSNTM. Just put CSNTM in your phone and it will just pop up. Pictures and pictures of hundreds of New Testament manuscripts. Thousands, tens of thousands of pages digitized. So there's nothing secret about this. This is public information, okay? Most people don't know about it, but it's publicly available information. There's been no possibility that these things have been falsified because there's never been a central power for the Christian church which has been in a position to falsify them. Christianity starts out a bit chaotically. The Christians don't have, big non-profit organisations or whatever it is in place, and the Romans are chasing them, and it's sometimes a little bit difficult, okay? They've got no central authority, and therefore they're not in a great position to go around and foist their beliefs on everyone, and they're spreading out through the Roman Empire. And if they're spreading out, one thing that means is they can't really coordinate. They can't, no cell phones back then, so if they can't just make something up over here in this country and expect the other Christians in another country to be following that. So if they were making stuff as they were going along, it's going to end up a real mess. But it's not. We find a huge unity of Christian belief across a wide area. And the manuscripts that we have today have been made in loads of different countries. Some of them have been made in Egypt, some in Italy, some around the place. And they're now in museums and universities and monasteries across the world. And there's no coordination. There's never been a group that could get them together and change them. What's more, Christians like to evangelize. You know what that means? It means they translate the Bible. So if it starts off in Greek, very soon it's made it into Latin, and then into Syriac and Coptic, the late Egyptian language. Then it's going to go to Ethiopic and Arabic and Anglo-Saxon and early forms of Russian, and everywhere it goes out and out and out. So if you ever wanted to change the Bible, guess what? You have to change the Bible in everyone's language, including one of those languages you don't read. How are you going to do that? And every Bible you copy, it takes a long time to copy out. How long is it going to take you to copy out the Gospel? To copy out an entire Bible could take a year. And it's really expensive to falsify because they don't have paper back then. They got leather and papyrus. So papyrus, you get the parts, you stick it together, you make a page. Leather, killing animals. So how many dozens of animals do you need to have enough pages for a Bible? Think about it. If you had to, kill dozens of animals before you have enough leather to have things for Bibles, that makes a Bible pretty expensive. So think that people are just like falsifying these things. The time involved just doesn't make any sense. So actually, there's lots of reasons to think that what we've got handed down to us is really reliable. But there's another way we can look at this subject to the reliability of the Gospels, and that is the character of Jesus. You see, the Gospels record about Jesus, and Jesus is a person you can't make up, because he's simply too creative. Elon Musk was on Twitter the other day, as he often is, and he was tweeting about how amazing it was that there was this idea of turn the other cheek. Okay, Elon, do you know where that comes from? It comes from this guy called Jesus. You can find it in his Sermon on the Mount. What else can you find in the Sermon on the Mount? Do you know how many memes there are in the Sermon on the Mount? Like, Jesus just holds the record for these amazing number of things that have really gone viral, like do unto others what you'd have them do to you. That's just amazing, and there it is. Judge not that you be not judged. The Lord's Prayer, all these sort of things that have really become really common. And what you got is in one 12-minute record of what he said, Matthew 5-7. You've got so many things that have become incredibly powerful, not just popular, but powerful for changing lives. Now, did Jesus come up with what's called the golden rule? Do unto others what you have them do to you. Well, no one's ever reported as saying that before Jesus. So either he came up with it, or he had amazingly brilliant disciples who came up with it and decided that rather than taking the credit themselves, they'd pass it on to their less talented teacher. Does that really seem very likely? Isn't it far more plausible that he's the talented teacher that came up with all the ideas? It does not make sense to say that gospel writers make things up. Let me explain why. In Luke's Gospel, you've got this absolutely stunning story. I'm going to spend some time talking about Saturday at the C.S. Lewis Institute. Do come along. It's the story of the two sons, sometimes called the story of the prodigal son. It's an amazing story. I've just written a whole book about it. It's just like great. And it's 2.5 minutes long, and it's a really clever story. Either the gospel writer comes up with it or Luke comes up with it. Now, the problem is if I say the gospel writer comes up with it, I have to make the gospel writer more, or Jesus comes up with it. I have to make the gospel writer more brilliant than Jesus. But I also have to make the other gospel writer more brilliant than Jesus because he comes up with other things in another gospel. And you can end up making the gospel writers all like 4 brilliant dudes and Jesus not so brilliant. But it's a whole load simpler to have the one brilliant teacher, and if his students did well, that's because they had a really brilliant teacher. That is the simplest way to explain what we can see. And so it makes a lot more sense to say that what we got in the Gospels comes from Jesus. It's not just that he's got amazing sayings. Like, there's this thing where people are trying to trick him and trap him. The Jews are under the Roman Empire, and that means that they're having to pay taxes to Caesar. And there's this big divide. Like, you know, you've got political divide in your country, right? Really big, deep political divide. People want to say, are you on this side or are you on that side? That's what they want to do to you. And they're trying to get Jesus. Are you on the, we're going to pay taxes to Caesar, I'm going to sell out to the Romans? Or are you going to be faithful and say, no, I'm going to put God first? He says, show me a coin. Show me a coin. Whose head's on it? Caesar's. Okay? Give to Caesar what's to Caesar's, and to God what's God's. Now, that's just an amazing answer. And it's a really profound answer, because the profound answer is this. What's God's? We as humans are in the image of God. So if Caesar's head is on his coin, God's stamp is on each of us. And so he's saying you have to give the whole of yourself to God. Now, who came up with that brilliant thing? Was it the gospel writer or was it Jesus? Don't you see, if you're going to say the gospel writers, you're going to have to make them amazing geniuses with no cause behind it. He doesn't explain the thing. But if you say it's Jesus, who's God's son coming to the world, it's going to make sense. But it's not just that he has these amazing memes, if you like, these amazing answers, these sayings. And he's also got amazing stories, so many of them. He's also got an amazing life, hasn't he? Go to a synagogue. Find a synagogue in Chicago, say, what are your holy books? Okay, the holy books will be basically your Old Testament. So how do their holy books begin? They begin with a scene. One of the early scenes, Genesis chapter 3, is a couple of humans at a tree taking fruit and death coming into the world through their disobedience. Okay? Now, that's the beginning of the story. If that's the beginning of the story, how should the story end? Like, you're going to try and put a completion on that sort of story? What sort of way do you do it? And it clearly isn't a complete story in itself, is it? It's like a beginning, and we need that problem, whatever has happened at the beginning, to be resolved in story terms, right? Now, the amazing thing about this is we know that Jesus' life ended on a tree. That's the way Romans killed people. They didn't plane down their crosses and make them all smooth like planks. They were trees. Jesus died on a tree. And the Gospels report that just before dying, he, just as it says in Genesis chapter 3 that she took and she ate, Jesus says to his disciples, take, eat, this is my body. And then what happens? He's on the cross and he dies for the sins of the world, And as the story goes, he rises again the third day, having conquered death. Now, to me, that is just an amazing answer to the way the storybook began. We know the Christians didn't write Genesis. Right? Go and ask any Jews, did the Christians write Genesis? They'll say, no, Jews wrote that, okay? That's part of the Jewish Holy Scriptures. Now, how do you get a good story arc when something's written by committee? How does it make any sense to have a story arc so good that Harry Potter, the best-selling series, is modelled off the same story arc? That Lord of the Rings is modelled off the same story arc? The best literature that we've had in the last century, based on sales, they use the same story arc that comes from the Bible, and yet we know the Bible wasn't written by one lot of people. So Jesus is a total genius who comes up with amazing sayings, who is reported to have performed lots of miracles, and no one's denying that early on. People are wondering about what Harry does miracles, they're not denying it. Who's got loads of stories, and his own life makes a story. And to me, it becomes too much to say that's all invented. Now, some people say, I've got a problem with miracles. Aren't miracles like infinitely improbable? How can a miracle possibly happen? What they haven't considered is, look at the other worldviews. Look at a secular worldview, an atheist worldview. They've got miracles too. They've got miracles like saying that living things have somehow come out of non-living things. That conscious things have somehow come out of non-conscious things. That to me seems like a miracle, but not a miracle that makes a lot of sense. When Christians believe in miracles, we're not asking people to believe that there's a haunted house over there, there's something paranormal, there's UFOs, there's something weird. We're asking people to believe in miracles that make a pattern. They're not breakings of patterns. They're not breakings of laws. They're actually making a pattern. They all point towards Jesus. Jesus is remarkable, not just because of the things he said and the things he did, and the life he lived, but also put everything together. He comes from the most remarkable people group in the world, namely the Jews. He died, not just according to the Gospels, but according to Jewish sources, on the eve of when they were celebrating their greatest deliverance, namely the Passover. He died at their capital city. And time again, we see in his life that his life has remarkable things, and his life also fits with prophecies that were written beforehand, and it also seems that he comes from a royal line. And so all of these things come together, and you start saying, wow, isn't it like there's a converging pattern of utter amazing communication from God to humans via Jesus? That's what's going on. And I don't know of another way of plausibly explaining that other than by saying that Jesus really is God, and what we got in the Gospels really are reliable. They can be tested historically in so many ways, and they come up so well. There aren't lots of other sources that will be anything like as good as them. The details we can know about Jesus' life are amazing. And so I want to suggest to you, and want to leave plenty of time for questions, that they really can be trusted. Now, just before we close, I want to look at the question of can they be proved? Can they be proven? Because I think sometimes people are looking for someone to prove something scientifically. Can you prove scientifically that your mother loves you? Laugh. Yeah, you can't. You could give loads of evidence that your mother loves you. She cooks me nice meals, right? But that's not proof, is it? That doesn't prove it. That's just circumstantial evidence. There could be other motives that she's just really good at acting or whatever. Don't think so. You know, we are social creatures, and we don't live our lives by expecting proof on everything. And use scientific proof for scientific things. Use mathematical proof for mathematical things. Don't try and apply those to when it comes to the Gospels. Because the Gospels communicate to us as ordinary people. We have to trust each other. We just ate some amazing pizza. Do you know who the names of the people who prepared that pizza? Do you know they had time to slip poison that pizza? You know, but we took it, didn't we? We trust our lives to people all the time. We don't ask for prove to me that that pizza is not going to be poisoned. No, you eat it, right? And so what you realise is all the time we're making decisions, we're trusting day by day. And sometimes what happens is this. People use one lot of evidence, so that's the amount of evidence I need for trusting a romantic relationship. But somehow when it comes to God, I need that much evidence, a completely different amount. And it's just completely inconsistent. There's enough evidence of Jesus in the Gospels for us to know that we can trust him, just as we trust others around us. In fact, there's more evidence. So that's why we should trust Jesus and we trust the Gospels, but don't try and prove things, because if someone wants to be awkward, really awkward, you can't even prove to them that you exist. They can just say, you know, I could be just a brain stimulated by chemicals in some vat, and you can't actually prove to them you exist. Because people are clever enough that if they want to be awkward, they can. So people are clever enough that if they want to explain away evidence, they can. People can walk away from Jesus. It's not an advisable thing. So I want to say to you, you can trust the Gospels. I'm not going to try and prove it to you if you want to be awkward. Thank you.
We have a couple questions. Peter, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. I just have one question. I don't know, Mike, where's Mike's office? Are we supposed to take some questions from the audience? We're not. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions. A couple things that came to mind quickly. How do you, with all your intellectual knowledge, all your study, you know, translated your own translation of the Greek New Testament, how do you keep a childlike faith? What does that look like for you practically?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, however much you know an absolutely tiny amount. I think there's this bizarre thing that when we get a few decades of knowledge, some humans think, hey, I know a lot. Dude, you know virtually nothing. And it's just amazing how little any human knows. You know, Einstein, how little Einstein knew. It's just stunning. And so I think part of it is just getting things in proportion. People get mad with money as well. Like they get a few $100 million and start thinking, oh, I've got a few $100 million. Like, dude, do you know how much money you don't have? You know, there's so much money in the world you don't have. You know, so I think part of it is just being realistic about us. You know, your heart can stop beating, you know, next second, we're just frail, you know, and we just make mistakes all the time. I just bumped into a curb yesterday, you know, and the thought that we're like somehow, yes, it's brilliant, it's like, it's silly. So I think you just got to, you know, read the scriptures, recognize how much Jesus knows and how little we know, and how dependent we are on him. And also, and I've seen both my parents both gone through Jesus, both died, but I've seen them both get to the point where they didn't recognize me. You know, they're lovely, lovely Christians, but, you know, our minds are, you know, are very frail, and just recognizing that.
You're part of a local church in England as well.
Yeah.
Home church there. Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah, so I'm involved in Eden Baptist Church, a lovely church. Just our pastor, who's 60, has just decided to go and be a missionary in Madagascar.
Wow.
So, you know, we're looking for someone else at the time, but it's exciting to be part of a church which is, well, you've got a pastor who wants to go and, you know, do that as well. And so I'm really blessed by being involved there. The house group met tonight, but they couldn't meet in my house because my wife's at a funeral and I'm here, so, you know,
awesome.
but yeah, love having them around.
Two more quick questions. One, tell us about this new book you're writing that's coming out and why'd you?
Yeah, so I've written a book. I've actually finished writing it, just, you know, proofreading it now. It's The Surprising Genius of Jesus. It's available pre-order on Amazon.
You didn't bring us free copies.
Sorry?
You didn't bring us free copies.
It's not going to be out till October. So, yeah.
Okay. So
It's not even physically printed yet, but what it is just a short and hopefully quite simple book about how clever we can show Jesus' teaching to be. And looking at this, and I'll talk about this for anyone who's there at the event on Saturday, which the C.S. Lewis Institute is putting on somewhere, which is, I think it's Moody Church, the way Jesus teaches people at multiple levels. I'll give you a little idea. I mean, ability to teach mixed ability classrooms, I really admire teachers who can do that. But Jesus does exactly that. Tells you at the beginning of Luke chapter 15, where he tells the parable of the prodigal son. He tells you there were tax collectors and sinners, so guys interested in money and people interested in sin, okay? Those two can go together. And there were scribes and Pharisees. Scribes' job to copy out the Bible. So the scribes know the Bible super well, and probably sinners aren't so interested in the Bible. And what he does, he tells this story, which you need no Bible background whatsoever to understand. The parable of this son who runs away. He also tells this story about the son and the older brother, which is full of loads of references to the Old Testament. You have to come to one Saturday or buy the book to find out, which is precisely matching the scribal training. So he picks out bits from their scribal training and hits them with it. And that's really clever.
awesome. So what is Saturday, C.S. Lewis Institute? That's
So it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's called The Surprising Genius of Jesus.
at Moody Church. The last question is that as the chorale's coming up.
Yeah.
Hold on. The Gospel of Mark. A lot of us are there's gonna be a challenge here to read the Gospel of Mark for the London season, and I think John's gonna lead we're gonna have like a study group follow up after that. How might you recommend both the believer in here to read through that 16-chapter book, and then maybe there's probably seekers in here as well, people that don't know Jesus. How might you challenge both a believer to read the Gospel of Mark with fresh eyes, and then just the seekers who might be watching this video right here today?
Yeah, I would say I'd really encourage people to read the Gospels. Also, we've got amazing things that our phones now can read the Gospels to us. And so all the audiobook facility we've got, and I often have these on when I'm, in the car and that sort of thing.
But in particular, the Gospel of Mark, or any counsel on the Gospel of Mark on how to particularly what to look for, or?
I think it's also really good to read slowly, and I think every bit is really worthwhile. It's an action-packed book, Jesus, not so many speeches, but loads and loads of action, and I think that's exciting.
Awesome. Peter, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you guys. Wow.
Thank you so much. Did you learn a thing or two from that? I certainly did. That was wonderful. Great to hear all of those interesting things about God's Word and how we can trust it together. 250 years ago, this year, the song Amazing Grace was written. This is the anniversary year of that song, so we thought it would be appropriate to close with that this evening. One of the best known, best loved songs in the church, and maybe one of the best known tunes in all of the Western world. And we just wanted to close with that tonight, especially since it's 250 years old. So would you stand with us, and let's close our time together tonight just as we celebrate and sing about this good news of the gospel. After hearing so much about these four Gospels, as we sing about this wonderful news of Jesus, celebrating together Amazing Grace.
Sweet
Oh, well, this has been a really remarkable night. Dr. Williams, where are you at? Right here. Thank you. Can we give a round of applause? What a blessing that was. Renew Chicago, Mike Walters, thank you for putting this on. The Moody team, yeah, round of applause for Mike. The Moody team, this is extraordinary. I felt like I just had a whole, I didn't expect all this night. It's wonderful, so thank you. Thank you all for attending. I just want to leave with one quick word. That is one thing I have found, that this whole field of apologetics, of knowing the basis and the strength of your faith, for so many years, and I feel like many Christians felt like I did for so many years, where they feel like if you ask too many questions the wrong way, all of Christianity is going to come down like a house of cards. And I have just found over and over again, by great teachers and minds like Dr. Williams tonight, and so many other countless books and resources, the more questions I ask, I just continue to find that the gospels hold true. Jesus is true. And I just want to encourage you, there's so many ways to follow up. Never stop asking good questions. God's not going to let you down. The Bible has been scrutinized for a couple thousand years now, and it's still standing strong, and other worldviews are failing, while Jesus is standing strong. Keep asking good questions. When you leave tonight, there's going to be a bunch of ways to take next steps. Joe encouraged you to go through the Gospel of Mark during Lent. Do that. What a wonderful work that would be. You're going to see a bunch of booths out there, different ministries you can get involved with. You've already heard about the C.S. Lewis Institute with KJ Johnson. KJ, are you in here right now? KJ's out there probably. KJ's wonderful. If you want to, that's a great apologetics ministry. Learn more theology. KJ's in the back over there. If you want to learn more about Dr. Williams this weekend, what he's doing, check with KJ. Our academy with Park, where you can learn more theology to fuel the mission, know how to do this well, know how to think rightly. Lots of different ministries out there. Please stop by, and most importantly, I've been told, there's cookies. Go in here, grab a cookie. One of the things we do after events like this is we talk with others, find out what you learned, and challenge each other, all right? Let me pray, I'm going to send you out here. Jesus, we thank you for a wonderful night like tonight. Thanks for a chance to worship with an entire choir orchestra, Lord. This is remarkable. Thanks for minds that can think rightly and process all this information, Jesus. What a gift that is. Thank you for the sweetness of the gospel tonight. Amen. God, thank you that Jesus, your mercy is new every single day. That never gets old. No matter how far we go down learning all the nuances of how to defend our faith, one thing is certain, your mercy is new every day. And we need that, Lord, and we just proclaim it right now. We love you. We thank you for the grace of the gospel. Send us out of here with an encouraging spirit, Lord, knowing that we're loved by Christ in him. So we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. we got a video?
Hi. Thanks. Here. I'm tired. I know. Yeah, the bus was like, oh yeah, somebody got on the bus and was like, homeschooler bus is so good. I was like, yeah, I think it was. Not just like the bus is the
Doctor. So how long were you in the U.S.? Okay. So which celebrity you Good job, Bill. You know, if you don't the position of what's going on in this country, you know that like American black, you can Yeah. So I did a very tough form of entry. Rather hostile. I tend to go to hostile one. So I like your The book is very popular in Chelsea.
Okay, make an introduction.
Hi, I'm Alejandra McBride. Nice to meet you.
Should be going to Cambridge this summer, right?
Yeah, I'm planning to do that summer program for just 1 week.
Right.
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 I hope it's not that intimidating, but it's going to be in the city.
That's great. So when are you going to be in?
The class is starting on July 16th.
Right.
I took a class last year, but it was online. It was like
Will you be in Cambridge?
I'm planning to be in person. Last year was online only with feedback on person.
Yeah, well, it'd be lovely. I mean, if you can pop right in our house. That'd be
Yeah.
good. Just to see what we do.
Okay, yeah. I'm still trying to figure out the logistics, and I'm a little bit like nervous, but I
Are you
think
going on your own or with anyone else?
I think I'm going